If you're like me and you're new to Formula One, the terminology can be a little bit confusing. ERS, DRS, VSC, ABC 123, LBC straight out of, I don't know. And some of the terms and acronyms can be a little bit confusing, so I thought I'd put out a video today to serve as kind of a guide and index for the rest of the season. So whenever you're watching Netflix, you're watching a race on Sunday or qualifying or what have you, or even another YouTube video, you kind of know what you're getting yourself into, what they're referring to, and how you can enjoy the sport a little bit better. Welcome to Formula Whiplash. We're all about learning F1 together. Today we'll be unraveling the acronyms, terms, and phrases of F1. Let's check them out. With the new season of Drive to Survive coming out on Netflix soon and the launch of the 2022 F1 season, I thought this would be a great time to put out a video on F1 terminology. So F1 is filled with a lot of engineering terms. I'm going to skip those because it's like really daunting and it goes down a whole other rabbit hole. So for the sake of this video, because it's tailored for people who are new to F1, for beginners, new fans, I'm breaking the video up into 3 sections. So the first section is going to be about the car, the next section is going to be about the race, and the third and final section will be about the track itself. And when we go over the terms for the track itself, it'll tie in the other 2 sections at the end. So it'll be a little easier to understand. So we're going to start things off with DRS. DRS is the drag reduction system. This is the system that opens the rear wing of the car when a car is within 1 second of a car in front of it and in a DRS zone. This is what encourages overtaking on the track. This is DRS. DRS is both the car and the track. Now let's talk ERS, the energy recovery system. Now this is where the hybrid portion of the car comes in, and this part's pretty cool. This is where the car can recuperate some of the energy it's lost over the course of the race. If you're a gamer, think of ERS as the turbo button. Whenever a driver needs this extra boost of power that it's recovered, bang, it's like overtake city. It's awesome actually. ERS plays a big role in strategy because it's energy that can be conserved and used. If a driver's conserving it, he may be using it to defend against an overtake that's inevitable just because he has a slower car, but he can have a strong defense if he uses his ERS wisely. Likewise, a driver might be conserving his ERS in preparation for a really strong attack later in the race. So that's the game of cat and mouse that you get to see played out live. It's a lot of fun. Periodically, you'll hear about a couple of engine parts, the mgu-h and the mgu-k. The motor generator unit, heat, and the motor generator unit, kinetic. So they'll talk about these parts wearing out or being replaced throughout the year as you're following all the races throughout the season. The mgu-h is its kind of own motor, but also uses exhaust gases that are also used to generate electricity. The mgu-h is super complicated and super expensive. That's most of what you need to know right there. The mgu-k, the mgu kinetic, helps power the engine, but it also takes that braking power and converts it to electricity that can be used as the turbo button later on in the race. So that's kind of how it works loosely without going down the rabbit hole. Halo. If you don't know what the halo is, it's pretty awesome. The halo of the car is the ring that goes around the driver's head. Now, when the halo first came out, it was met with some resistance by some of the drivers. Guys like Roman Grosjean didn't like it until it saved his life in Bahrain in 2020. It saved Lewis Hamilton's neck last year when he made contact with Max Verstappen at that tight turn 1 chicane in Italy. Okay, now let's go over some race terms. VSC, virtual safety car. So a virtual safety car will get deployed usually if there's a little bit of debris on the track, nothing significant enough to warrant an actual safety car coming out. So a VSC is actually just the slowing down of all the cars. They slow down to 30% of what the FIA considers the speed for a standard racing lap. If the drivers exceed that, they will get penalized. A VSC can be issued in any session, could be practice, qualifying, or the race. Speaking of sessions, let's go over FP1, 2, and 3. FP stands for free practice. Free practice sessions 1, 2, and 3. So this is where the drivers are going to get familiar with the track. They're going to practice their setups. They're going to tune their cars to the track, to the conditions, and that's what the practice sessions are used for. They come before the qualifying session. Following FP1, 2, and 3 come Q1, 2, and 3. Now, the qualifying session has 3 sessions inside of it, and qualifying is used to determine the grid order for Sunday's race. So it's very, very critical for teams to put in the fastest lap times they possibly can. Q1 comes first, with the slowest 5 drivers getting cut. Then Q2, with the next slowest 5 drivers getting cut. The Q3 has all final 10 drivers on the track at once, putting in their fastest lap times. Sometimes this can lead to some strange situations like traffic jams on the final turn before they round it to start their lap. We've seen a lot of that in the past couple of years, and it's getting pretty bad actually. But you'll see that qualifying this year a little bit. The FIA is trying to deal with it, but qualifying is actually pretty exciting. Now, the fastest driver of the entire grid for qualifying takes what's called pole or pole position. That just means first place on Sunday's race. And after all of the drivers have completed their qualifying laps, the cars go into what's known as Parc Ferme. This is a condition, it's a rule, where the cars can no longer be tuned or messed with after the qualifying session. The cars cannot be touched or messed with after qualifying on Saturday. Hands off, leave them alone. Has to be the same car you set up on Saturday to race with on Sunday.
Don't touch it. Please don't touch it.
Now, when it comes to Sunday's race, about halfway through the session, you're going to start seeing what are called back markers. These are cars that are behind by 1 lap or more. Now, this is a big one. That's what she said. But back markers are important. They can determine the outcome of a race if they're in the way. So, a lot of times when you see a safety car come out or a session is stopped with the red flag, the marshals will take the back marked cars and everyone will get in the actual correct order on the track. This means whatever you see on TV, that will reflect the actual grid order and the times instead of everyone all mixed together. Okay, so let's talk about pit stops. When it's time to come into the pits to execute their pit strategy, you're going to hear a phrase box box. Box box means get your ass into the pits. Instead of saying get your ass into the pits, they just say box box. Now, why? They could say pit pit, but they don't. They just say box box. Now, when they're in the pits, they're executing a pit strategy. Pit strategy, you'll hear this phrase, does not mean the strategy of the pit crew. The pit strategy refers to when the cars should come in and which tires they should be put on to make the fastest times and to be the most aggressive on the track. That's pit strategy, that's box box. Okay, time for track terms. So when it comes to track terms, and these are a lot of fun, on the track, there's the actual course itself, and then there's the racing line. You're going to hear the term racing line quite a bit. The racing line and the track aren't the same thing. The racing line is the fastest way around the track. You'll start to see a path of the racing line that all the cars follow about halfway through the race because of all the marbles on the side of the track. What are marbles, you ask? Thank you for asking. Marbles are the little pieces of rubber that come off the tires as they're being spun and worn out and going on throughout the race, and they end up outside the racing line. They're also called klag in other motorsports, but in F1, they're called marbles. In fact, at the end of races, drivers intentionally drive over these marbles so they accumulate and stick to the tires to make their cars heavier so they meet the weight requirement at the end of the race. Now, when it comes to pits and the pit lane, you might hear another associated term, paddock. Paddock and pits are not the same. Paddock is the area behind the pit lane. This is where drivers do interviews. This is where people are moving equipment around. It's like backstage. You can get a paddock pass at an F1 race and walk through it. Totally different than the pit lane. The pit lane is the business end. Okay, and finally, flags. Blue flags means a car has been lapped and it has to move out of the way. As soon as you see a blue flag come out, that means a car's been lapped, that's a back marker car, and it has to move out of the way of the faster cars behind it. Those cars are racing each other. Yellow flag means either a virtual safety car or a real safety car is occurring. Could be in one section of the track for a VSC or the entire track, or a real safety car is out there. That's yellow flag. And red flag means a session is stopped entirely. It means something bad has happened. Either means weather has gotten so bad they can't continue, they need to pause for a little bit, cancel it altogether, or there's so much debris on the track, it's unsafe to continue, and they'll bring all the cars in the pit lane when that happens. One of my favorite terms in Formula One, chicane. Why don't they call it S-turns or something cool like snake turns? Snake turns is like so much better than chicane, but they call it a chicane. It's just a quick S-turn in a track. It's actually a really important part of the track because that's where our cars can make up or lose quite a bit of time, actually. So be on the lookout for chicanes when you're looking at tracks. So when you first started watching F1, what are some terms or phrases that you heard you thought meant a certain thing and meant something like totally different? Comment below and let me know. I kind of want to know what people were thinking when the first time they heard some of these terms and phrases. Okay, so now you guys have the basic phrases and terms ironed out. You're ready to watch the new season of Drive to Survive on Netflix. You're ready for the 2022 season to kick off. You guys are well prepared. Thanks for coming by, watching my video, and I'll see you in the next one.